welcome to Think Duality. So, if this is your first time at this channel, think of this channel as kind of like a one stop shop for everything you love. Now, wouldn't that be nice? Everything you love. Well, let me put it this way. This channel focuses on engaging in meaningful conversations, things related to current events, politics, sports, and entertainment. Of course, we need to throw in entertainment. Otherwise, this stuff can get kind of boring. So when I talk about entertainment, unfortunately, there's not a lot of good entertainment that's going around unless you putting on Netflix or whatever your favorite movie. But unfortunately, when it comes to the world of politics and current events, there is a lot of entertainment. It just may not necessarily be the kind of entertainment you are looking for, but nonetheless, we've got plenty of to talk about. And entertainment is entertainment. Current events is current events, no matter how you look at it. So, all we can ask for, we would be forever grateful if you like and hear what you see, that you would like and share this video, as it definitely helps with the YouTube algorithm. So let's get into it, guys. Let's get into it. All right. So let's talk about the economy. Now, the world is burning. The world is burning as we know it. There are so many things happening around the world, unfortunately, things completely out of our control and out of our scope. We've got the conflict in Ukraine, Russia, the conflict in Israel, Gaza. We've got tensions heating up in Kosovo and that region and that corridor. We've got your countries on NATO really kind of rethinking their position as to whether or not they want to stay with NATO. I mean, there's so many things happening all around the world, in addition to all the natural disasters, like things that happen in Morocco, Libya, Turkey, Afghanistan. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to make sense of some of this information. But unfortunately, with all these calamities and things that are happening around the world, it does affect your financial wallet. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about the economy. So unless you've been sleeping under a rock for like the last few years, and if you have, then maybe it's good for you because you missed a lot of terrible news. But you guys obviously know, with the pandemic and with everything that's happened, pre and post pandemic, and I guess we're still in a pandemic. There's all kinds of new strains coming up. Things have really affected the economy in a very negative manner. Now, last week, JP Morgan was actually in an interview, and not JP Morgan, the CEO of JP Morgan. Can you imagine if JP Morgan was actually back? Wow. That would make him probably the oldest living person in the world. But the CEO of JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon, was in an interview last week, and he was quoted as saying that this very well may be perhaps one of the most dangerous times that we've seen in decades. Now, that statement in itself is not only bold, but it's a pretty heavy statement, and a lot of people may not really understand the magnitude of what Jamie Dimon is saying. But in essence, with unfortunately everything that I just mentioned, from the pandemic to all these conflicts and tensions happening all around the world with the natural disasters, it's really beaten up the financial sector, and in turn we've been feeling it, of course, because if you drive a vehicle, you felt it at the gas pumps. If you're buying groceries, which obviously you need to buy if you want to survive, then you felt it there as well too. So, and if you're that new couple that's looking to get into your first home, and you're trying to get a mortgage for the first time, well, obviously I'm sure you have a few stories, and it's not fun. It's not fun, especially when you need to borrow money, right? So, unfortunately, with all these escalating conflicts and issues happening all around the world, these are having far-reaching impacts on energy prices, on food costs, on international trade and diplomatic ties as we see it. So, Jamie Dimon also went on to say something else. He was talking about the interest rates, the rise of the interest rates in the United States. And he went on to say that, unfortunately, due to consumer savings, diminishing consumer savings, he feels that interest rates could be on the rise yet again And so now, when we're talking about the interest rates and how that affects us, now it doesn't matter if you're in North America, if you're in the world, but especially if you're living in the United States, the interest rates, the feds have raised interest rates, if you've been counting, 11 consecutive times since March last year. Interest rates have increased 11 consecutive times since last year. That is unbelievable. Unbelievable. How we're surviving, I mean, nobody knows. But that in itself is really troublesome. Now, the feds are not done. And in fact, they're meeting November 1st, which is right around the corner. They're gonna discuss policies. There's gonna be a lot of economists and policymakers and all the people behind the scenes that that are trying to figure this stuff out. They're all gonna be there, and they're all gonna be wondering what's gonna happen. Now, there's some people on one side that are saying, you know what? I think we should be fine. Interest rates are not going to go up, at least not on November 1st, at least not this time around. But there's some speculation and things kind of brewing about the possibility of interest rates going up before the end of the year. So how does that work? I don't know. So we're going to have to see how this kind of plays out. But it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when interest rates are on the rise again. Okay, so that's something to kind of watch. Now, unfortunately, I did mention this is quite worrisome. Obviously, the feds are not happy the way the economy is, and they're afraid that interest rates are going to have to be where they're at for a lot for a lot longer than what was originally anticipated. When you're looking at the American and the Canadian economy, they've had rough patches. I mean, all around, right? I mean, growth has slowed considerably. Job growth has moderated, and obviously, inflation remains to be stubbornly high, right? And it doesn't seem to be changing or getting better it doesn't seem to be getting better anytime soon, right? And unfortunately, it's the good folks, all the people out there in their homes, taxpayers and just people in general who are feeling the pinch everywhere they go financially. And I mean, one can only guess what's going to happen, right? But from what we're hearing, it seems like things are going to actually get a lot worse before they get better. Now, how bad are things really? Well, things can get extremely bad. I mean, we're talking about the policymakers and all the economists and the people behind the scenes are trying to make things happen and trying to balance the numbers, so to speak. But the experts say that there's obviously many different factors, some of which that I mentioned, that are obviously impacting us financially. But when we're talking about things getting potentially worse, a lot worse than what they are, that's a fact, and there's a lot of evidence to support that. It's funny because earlier this year, some of the banks were actually coming out to say that, you know what, we feel that interest rates are actually going to go down in fall of 2023, and so it's and obviously that was to people were excited and happy, and especially a lot of investors and first-time home buyers, because this will give people an opportunity to purchase that home that they've been wanting to purchase for quite some time, and now they just have to wait. Well, we're in fall of 2023, and interest rates have not gone down. In fact, those same individuals are looking to purchase a new vehicle or borrow money from the bank. Interest rates are extremely high, making it very unbearable to the point where you really have to reconsider and do your due diligence, do your research. You have to rethink as to whether or not it's actually, if it makes economic sense to go ahead and actually purchase that new vehicle or even get into that new home. So yes, will interest rates eventually go down? 100%. They should eventually go down. But again, none of us have a crystal ball. How are we supposed to be able to determine what's going to happen with all these things happening around the world? It's it's really hard to guess that and to really figure these things out. But we have to put our trust, I guess, our trust in the policymakers. I don't know. But we definitely have to do we have to be as very careful as we can, be meticulous with your spending habits, and obviously there's a lot of resources out there that you can tap into in the event that you feel that you need perhaps maybe a second opinion before getting into something that could be ever life changing. So, for instance, if you wanted to buy a car a year ago, it would have been probably 10% cheaper. Obviously, it's a lot more. The cost of borrowing obviously is a lot higher now, so it makes things a lot more challenging. And you know what? All of this has to relate to the consumer price index. Now, the consumer price index is important to understand inflation. Now, I know this stuff can be kind of boring and it's stuff that we don't necessarily really want to talk about, but it's important to understand. If you want to understand inflation, inflation is the rise of goods and services over a period of time. And if you want to understand inflation, you have to understand the consumer price index. Now, for instance, the consumer price index measures the average change over time in the prices paid by an urban consumer like you and I for a market basket of goods and services. Now, what's that market basket of goods and services? Well, I want you to say market basket of consumer goods and services 10 times really fast. Market basket of goods and services, market basket of market basket of consumer goods and services, market basket of consumer. I can't do it. Anyways, okay. This market basket of consumer goods and services, what does it include? And why is that important to me? Well, those are things like food, shelter, furniture, clothing, recreation, and transportation. Now, right off the bat, food and shelter. I mean, you need to have food if you want to live, right? If you got to eat, right? You guys eat. So obviously, if you've been to the grocery store, you notice that prices are just going through the roof. Now, the government has called a lot of the CEOs for a lot of the big, chain grocery stores, and they're starting to look at, bringing the price points down a little bit on some of the foods that we need. So that's a good sign, right? But still, food is still quite high. When you're talking about shelter, well, we're just talking about how expensive it is just to get into a new home, right? I mean, when you're looking at the interest rates, I mean, where they're at, in some cases almost double what we've been privy to. I mean, a majority of your lifetime you're going to be spending just paying the interest off rather than paying the principal. Now, this is worrisome, folks, because your house is kind of like your investment. But if you're going to be paying for the rest of your life and you're still not able to see the end line, being able to pay your mortgage off within your lifetime, how valuable really is that asset? But then on the flip side, you do need a place to live. You need a place to call your home, right? To lay your head at night when you go to bed or in the morning, depending on your shift work, I guess. But the other thing that you could do is, if you don't want to buy a home right now, is you can rent, and that's fine. Go ahead and rent. Nothing wrong with renting, right? Well, here's the other issue. Rental rates are at its highest that it's ever been in the last 40 years, right? According to experts, according to the Bank of Montreal in Canada, they're saying that rental rates are at its highest that it's ever been in the last 40 years. And it seems like rental rates are continuing to go up, and they're getting a lot more costlier, to the point where it's almost like a mortgage for some people. The only difference is, I mean, if your rent is the same as what you would be paying as if you had a mortgage, but then again, you may have no choice but to rent because you can't afford to buy that home. If I purchase a home, then my mortgage is going to be here. Oh my gosh, the rent and the mortgage just seems to be almost the same. Well, that could very well be true, depending on where you live, what part of the country, depending on all kinds of circumstances, of course. But in a lot of cases, sometimes the rental rates are almost as much as a mortgage. Well, the thing is, if you can't afford to purchase a home, then what are your choices? You have to rent. So now You're paying what you're paying top dollar just to be able to live in a home. And if you forego that opportunity, and if you don't want to do that because you feel that it's unfair, well, then what are your choices? What do you do? So this is like a catch-22, folks, and it's getting so out of control. The governments need to do something. They need to step in, and they need to either put rental caps or something in place that they can actually, sleep comfortably at night, right? Anyways, that those will be ongoing discussions. So instead of talking about the increases in how much we're paying in gas or the cost of groceries going up, now we got to worry about rental rates, right? And so all that kind of factors into inflation. For example, when we're talking about the consumer price index, just to give you a quick little example, if you're trying to compare $100 spent in 1914 to $100 today, well, $100 in 1914 would equate to about $2,600 in today's money. All right, that's a 2,600% increase. And so that kind of tells you a little bit about how the consumer price index works and how that relates to inflation. So inflation from last year has gone up about close to about 4%, right? So $100 last year is about $104 today, right? So anyhow, that's kind of like boring math, and math has never really been my strong suit. So that's a little bit about the economy. It's absolutely worrisome, folks, and honestly, like we'll try to make sense of some of that stuff. There's a lot of great resources out there, as I mentioned before. Do your due diligence, do your homework before making that big purchase or planning to do something that you feel that is definitely going to affect your financial health. Think about your actual health, right, before making those decisions, right? So be a little extra careful and meticulous before making that decision. Guys, we're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you on the next one.